Welcome back. As you saw there in the beginning of the video, we've got the fossil uncovered, got it dug out into the sunshine to do a little action on it today. Today we're going to get started getting ready for race season, and the first thing that we need to do is test things that we have changed. The biggest thing that we have changed is this new Pro Mod 98 turbo from Precision Turbo, and we need to see how that's going to react. We need to see how it's going to spool. Fortunately, yesterday was a nice day. Today, not so much. It's pouring down rain, it's cold. Yesterday was 70, sunny, beautiful day, but welcome to Kentucky. So, took advantage of the nice day yesterday to do some spool up testing with the truck here. Got it outside, got it warmed up, and I wanted to start off conservatively. Like I've talked about in past with other nitrous related type videos, spool up videos, you want to avoid backfiring as much as possible. And because one, we have no idea how this new turbo is going to react, and two, even though it is a nice warm 65, 70 degree day, the air is really good, it's dry, so it's not gonna be able to take as much nitrous, and when you don't know where to start, it's always better off to start conservatively. So I actually kept everything the same of how it was back in October when we last ran the truck. So we're starting off with a 24 spool jet. That's my first spool jet. That comes on at 1400 engine RPM. And then the second spool jet is a 033 jet, and that comes on at 1900 RPM. Usually I pretty much leave the first spool jet alone, regardless of the weather. The first spool jet is mainly just to get the turbo kind of wicked up, or really to get the engine wicked up, to get it to the point where it's moving enough air to get the turbo spinning. And then the 1900 RPM one, that's usually the one that matters. That's the one that's gonna make all the difference. So that's the one that will run up or down depending on the weather situation. But today, we're sticking with the 33 because the weather, I look back at my notes, is similar to how it was the last time the truck was ran back in October. And then on the bottle pressure side, I'm gonna start a little bit conservative on that as well to avoid with the backfiring. We're gonna start with the bottle pressure, the bottle itself at 975. And you can never trust those bottle gauges. The gauges on the bottle, I've seen them 200 PSI difference between the actual pressure at the nitrous system on your data logger and versus what the pressure is telling you. So 975 with my bottles is going to be around 850 or so on the actual nitrous pressure that the engine's going to see. And so that's a good place to start when you're kind of back to throwing darts at the dartboard per se. So first thing that I always do, especially on the very first spool up of the day, is I'm gonna get everything good and warm. So I'm gonna make sure that the engine is up to at least 100 degrees, 110 degrees. And the first one of the day, the transmission temperature is always gonna be cold. Even if it's a really hot day out, 80, 90 degree day, the transmission temperature usually starts off less than ambient. So I want to get that all warm. The reason that we want to get all that warm is because we want to simulate what it's actually going to be doing at the racetrack after you do a burnout and you pull up to the lights. So I try to keep all of my temperatures the same as what they would be actually at the racetrack. So the easiest way to do that, just get it up on a high idle and basically high idle it in gear. The reason I do it in gear is so that it is putting a little bit of load on the torque converter and it's generating heat, which is going to warm the transmission up. The only thing that warms up a transmission is the torque converter. So you need to get it up on the converter a little bit if you're trying to warm it up. So I'm gonna back it out here, do that, get everything up to about 110, 115 degrees water temp. Like to get the transmission on the first one at least to around 80, 85 degrees. And then from there, it's ready for a spool up. Everything's warmed up, we're good to go, all the temps are in check, everything looks good, nitrous is on, let's stick it and see what kind of boost we make. So, not bad, but not good. But there's a reason. The nitrous has got something going on with it. There's a restriction in line. Something is not happy with the nitrous setup. The bottle was 975 when I started to spool up the bottle itself, but the race pack data showed me that the pressure at the nitrous solenoids was actually only 573. So it doesn't matter what bottle you have, there's never going to be a 400 psi difference unless you have some major restriction going on there. I know my bottles, I've not changed bottles, it's the same ones last year. It's not the bottle's fault. There's something going on that's restricting that nitrous. And then during that spool up, a spool up uses a very small amount of nitrous in the grand scheme of things. An 024 jet and an 033 jet, especially at 573 psi, is next to nothing. I mean, this is like just breathing on it a little bit with nitrous. So your pressure should never really drop significantly at all. I mean, maybe 10 psi during that time. And this went from 573 to 488 by the end of that spool up. So this thing dropped almost 100 psi. So there is a massive restriction in this nitrous system, which is not good. I guess the silver lining in that is that turbo came up almost on fuel. You know, that's like one step above just being fuel only. And as you saw, that's me going from an idle to flat footing it. That's no high idle jazz and all that stuff. Like, I like to roll in there on an idle, set the first bulb, stick it, and roll it in. So I test exactly how I'm going to do it at the track. And my old 88 would not have done that. It would have hit a wall, probably, you know, with that little amount of nitrous and that much fuel, probably like 1700, and it would have just and fell on its face. The AFR on that was 14.8 to 1, which isn't great. Obviously you saw it was smoky, but with that small amount of nitrous there, I was really expecting the AFR to be much worse. With the proper amount of nitrous in the 88 before, the best AFR I ever saw was right around 18 to 1 spooled up. That was also only 12.8 pounds of boost. And the reason that it was only 12.8 pounds of boost is a couple things. One, this is a new turbo. It's a bigger turbine wheel, bigger compressor wheel. It's gonna make different boost for different fuel quantities and RPM. So we don't know exactly where that's gonna end up yet, but there wasn't enough nitrous there to keep it climbing. On my old setup, I would actually turn the second spool jet off at 14 pounds of boost, and I could lead that up or down to dictate if I wanted it to make 1 or 2 more or less PSI on the staging limiter. I could actually lead the timing in which I turn off that second spool jet, and it'll basically slow down or speed up how much it wants to overshoot the limiter and then come back down. So it's just another way that you can manipulate the starting line target boost. But with it not having nitrous there, not nearly enough nitrous there, it never even hit that 14 PSI target. So it's still spraying nitrous, but the amount of nitrous is getting less and less and less and less because that restriction is getting worse and worse and worse. So it's stuck at 12.8, it's not gonna make any more. That was 3,512 engine RPM though, which that's very promising because I'm gonna guess that once this thing is up and lit and 20 to 23 pounds of boost range, it's probably going to be 3,700 RPM, which is I like to leave on a bunch of RPM personally. I like to get all the torque out of it as you can. Makes it easier on the chassis, makes it easier on the engine, and I tend to believe that it's faster that way. So trans temp was 96 on that. Water temp was 122. Like I said, the AFR was 14.8 to 1. Now that we have this new XRP Next Gen Precision Turbo, I have shaft speed data. So the shaft speed was 50,317 RPM, which I'm gonna be honest with you, that seems a little high for 12.8 pounds of boost, but I gotta do some more research on that and figure out. I've never had shaft speed before, so I guess I really don't have any intelligent, guess to go off of. I'm just thinking that if my max is 125,000 RPM and I'm making 50,000 RPM at 12.8 PSI, that might be easy to overspeed, but learning curve, we'll see. But so what we got to do from here is we got to figure out what's going on with that nitrous restriction. I have a sneaking suspicion that there's a chance that my bottle could just be empty. I was using the same bottle that was in the truck at the end of last year. My bottles, I write on them like what I fill them to. So I usually fill them to about 30 pounds. I'll write 30 pounds. And then as I use the bottle, I'll write on the piece of tape what I did. And so that bottle said two spool ups, 2 burnouts, and then I couldn't read what the other thing was because my chicken scratch handwriting at the racetrack, but I think it said 2 purges. So I knew that there was definitely enough nitrous in it to do a spool up, or 2 or 3 even. But the first place, if you have any nitrous questions, concerns, especially if you see something pressure related, pull the bottle, weigh it. If it's empty, you'll know right away, and then put a fresh one in it and see what that does. So that's exactly what we're gonna do. Okay, so working on getting the new bottle out. Almost immediately, I realized that, oh yeah, this thing is out of nitrous. When they're out, you can tell right away because the bottle gets super, super light. So I'm hoping that that is exactly what the problem is. Going and getting a fresh new bottle. Gonna go ahead and preheat it, get that thing put in, and hopefully that fixes our nitrous issue. Yeah, so that bottle was empty. Empty. I got a further inspection on what I wrote, and it does not say 2 purges. It says 2 passes. So that nitrous had 2 test spool ups, 2 burnouts, and 2 passes on it. That bottle was flat out of nitrous. So I'm thinking that that could be the reason that it fell off so hard is because it's out of nitrous, but I'm not convinced that that's the reason why it was showing a different pressure between the bottle gauge and the race pack data. But we got a fresh bottle in it. We're gonna fire the truck up and turn the nitrous on. I always fire the truck up first and then turn the nitrous on just in case a solenoid was to be sticking. I never wanna be cranking the truck with nitrous trying to go in. That equals backfire bad. So start the truck up, turn all the valves on, and see what the race pack pressure is giving us this time. No dice. We definitely have a major restriction in this system because that was a brand new bottle. I preheated to 1,000 PSI on the gauge. Should have been giving me at least 800 PSI on the race pack, and it wasn't. I turned it on and it was giving me 630. And that's not much more than what it was, but the biggest thing that I know we have an issue is it was very slow to climb the pressure. Usually when you turn the quarter turn valve on, it'll just hit really fast and the nitrous will just shoot up on the dash there, the pressure. It was not doing that. It was basically 0, climbing, 100, 200, 300, and then until it got to about 630, and then it actually went back down a little bit and then came back up. And so I started investigating. There's no reason to do a spool up. Again, you're not gonna get any different result. If anything, it's just gonna get worse. So I do a little bit of quick investigating and I find that my first quarter turn valve is frosted over. So if something in the nitrous system is frosting, that's either it's losing a bunch of pressure out of that and it's making it really cold, or it's getting a bunch of pressure restricted right there, and as it gets neck down and some of it's able to go through, what's there is getting really cold because nitrous is negative 136 or 137 psi. So that first quarter turn valve frosting over means that quarter turn valve, there's something wrong with it. I'm going to guess that internally, even though the valve moves, that the ball that actually moves in there is probably not moving very much at all. And I think that it's honestly my fault because looking back on it, thinking on it, I left nitrous pressure on that valve for the last couple months. And so I think that I just got that valve, they're not designed to have pressure on them for that long. With me leaving that on there, I think that it just screwed that valve up. So, not the end of the world, no big deal. Cheap fix, just one of those things. Now I know, quarter turn valves are more sensitive than what you think that they should be. So, not gonna do another spool up today. There's really no point to put any more wear and tear on it if we're not going to be making any more forward progress. So we will have to get this nitrous valve fixed, and once we get that fixed, we will be doing more spool ups and seeing how fast we can make this thing spool up. That spool up from 2 psi, which is when my logger turns on, to on the limiter was 5.53 seconds. So not fast, obviously, because when you factor in the time from idle to fully up on the limiter, you're talking around 7-ish seconds, which in my opinion is not raceable. It has to be 5 seconds or less. Before, my best spool up ever was 2.5 seconds from 2 pounds of boost to up on the limiter. So this is about twice as slow, maybe closer to 3 times as slow, but it was with almost no nitrous, and with nitrous tapering off in the points where I really needed the nitrous there. So the 88 before would have never done that, and I'm impressed. I think that this thing is going to be a ripper. It is going to rock and roll once we get some nitrous fed to it. So stick around. Next video coming up with the truck, we're gonna figure out what went wrong with this quarter turn valve, get it fixed, get this thing spooled up, and see what this 98 can do. Thanks for watching. See you next time.